Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming a really great underrated actor from so many classic 80s movies, Michael Dolan. Michael Dolan, you may remember from such classics as Biloxi Blues, in which he played Hennessy, and he should have gotten an Academy Award nomination, but he didn't. He was brilliant in that movie. He was also in another war epic, but a real one, Hamburger Hill. And he was also in Light of Day with Joan Jett and Michael J. Fox. And he was also in Necessary Roughness and a couple other movies. And I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that stuff. And now he currently teaches, and I want to find out why the transition happened. This is such a journey podcast that I just love hearing people's stories. They are amazing, beyond amazing. So, here is my interview with Michael Dolan.
Hello.
Hey, Mike, it's Tommy. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Tommy. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. How's my audio?
Your audio is pretty good. You sound loud and clear there.
And where are you? Are you in California?
Redding, California.
Okay.
This is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Yeah, no sweat. Happy to talk to you. What's on your mind? What are you thinking about? What do you want to know?
So, going back in time, did you gravitate toward acting early on in your childhood?
Interesting question. As a kid, I was around film sets because my mother had a on-again, off-again relationship with a cinematographer named Vilmos Zsigmond. And so I was on the sets of interesting films like The Long Goodbye, and then we moved up to Vancouver when they were doing McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Mm-hmm. So I was around it in this very sort of, strangely intoxicated, young boy sort of seeing this world. And my mom's connection to it was not necessarily very cohesive in that, she was sort of just his mistress, and he would leave and go back to his family, and it was complicated, and sometimes she would leave. And so I had this sort of vision of it. And then I was living on an island off of Vancouver. She eventually moved. They had split up, and she moved to this, and they made this movie. It's actually a really interesting movie. It's one of the worst movies ever made. Actually, I don't think you could actually say that, because it has to have some value, because it's on the list of the worst movies ever made. It's a movie called Food of the Gods with Marjo Gordner, and wait for it, Ida Lupino.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, really. And Marjo Gordner's a trip. I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary about him, but he was a child evangelical kid. He travels around, and really interesting guy. He played like a football player who was like, had a break in his season. So he went home to this island where this weird white substance was oozing from the ground, and farm animals were getting into it, and the poor farmers were getting this, it's like the golden goose. They were suddenly, rich because they had these huge chickens laying huge eggs, but then the rats got into it, and then the rat,
Yeah.
And so I got to audition to be a rat, and I didn't actually get the part. I didn't fit in the rat costume, but so I was around it as a kid, but I didn't really do any, acting until later. And then in high school, I didn't really do much acting at all. But then I did get an agent. I forgot how. I was maybe like flirting with doing some modeling, and I got a commercial agent. And I did a couple commercials. That was my first sort of experience in acting. But then I had dropped out of high school, and I moved to Hawaii. And when I was living in Hawaii on this farm, I heard on the radio that they were auditioning for a play called The Rainmaker. And I don't know, I was just like, I'm going to go do that. And I did. and I got it. I got the part, and it was a really good production. A lot of people from LA, and the director was working at UCLA, and it was an incredible experience. And people were like, "You're really good at this. You should go to New York or to LA."
Mm-hmm.
And just crazy circumstances. I went to New York, and my sister was with me, and she was going to stay. We had friends who lived down in the Village. This woman, Elaine Grove, she's a painter and an illustrator and an actor and a model, and she was married to a pretty well-known abstract expressionist named Dan Christensen. And my sister was going to stay and be their au pair, and they had like a huge loft with a apartment in the back. And then she got back together with her boyfriend in Toronto, went back to Toronto. And I was like, "Can I stay?" And they were like, "Sure." So I stayed, and I was an au pair and a studio assistant, and I started taking acting classes, and I got a job at the Public Theater as an usher, which was super fun and super cool. And I saw all these amazing plays. And I was doing commercials. I got some more commercials, and then I was studying with this great teacher named Freddie Karaman, who had been at the Neighborhood Playhouse, but now ran his own studio that he shared with Win Handman, who was an amazing teacher as well. And Win Handman had started the American Place Theater, and I think was instrumental in Sam Shepard's work and some other playwrights, and was a really cool studio, and it was a Meisner, sort of one-year Meisner program that I did a couple times. And then as I was ushering down at the Public, I crashed an audition for this play called it was called Coming of Age in Soho, and I got cast sort of as a really small part that kept changing, and I was an understudy, and that play was a whole other podcast in itself in terms of it was one of the last plays that Papp, he kind of stepped in and directed part of it. Joseph Papp was, started the Public Theater and the New York Shakespeare Festival, and it was just fucking wild. I was like 19. I was just like, this is crazy and awesome. And at one point, they went away over the playwright, who's also directing, Albert Inarado, went away during Christmas and rewrote the play, and he wrote me a part. So suddenly I had a part. And I was living with this lighting designer, Jim Ingalls, up in Harlem. And I got a phone call one day that ICM wanted to talk to me, this guy Paul Martino at ICM. And that just changed everything.
Yeah, I've heard the reputation of Paul Martino, how crazy he is.
Yeah, I don't know if he was crazy. I mean, he was pretty straightforward to me. He was just, it was pretty straightforward, and he helped me get into some rooms that I couldn't have gone into, and I started, I left that play to do another play up in Albany, and I was going back and forth to Toronto. I'd gotten some work up in Toronto. I had an agent up there. I had citizenship up there. Not really. I had kind of landed immigrancy status because I would sort of bounce around, and but the first big movie I got was The Light of Day. Yeah. The Paul Schrader film.
You had done some.
I remember the producer.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. The producer of Light of Day.
A guy named Alan Poole, who's gone on to be an amazing producer in television, like premium television. He did 6 Feet Under and other stuff with Alan Ball, and then is now. I forget what he's doing now. He's doing the reboot of I forget the name. This Moffin's the sort of story of the 70s and sort of the gay life in New York in the 70s. Anyway, I'm not sure what it's on, but he's an amazing guy. But he told me, he said, I remember I really heard this. He was like, "Yeah, Paul Martino told us to cast you," and I was like, fuck, like agents have that much power. And I I did understand that things were packaged. Like everybody in the, especially when I did Biloxi Blues, like a lot of those people were at ICM, right? Mike Nichols was at ICM. Christopher Walken was at ICM.
Yeah.
Sheriff Broderick was at ICM. But But I sort of, I realized how powerful that was. And then, and especially later when I didn't have powerful agents, I was like, oh, that's the thing. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm talking too much. This is your podcast. What? Who are you? I don't even know who you are. How do you know Rachel and Corey? That's a pretty wildly... Those are two people from really different places.
I had them on the show, I'm just an entertainment buff, I always have been, especially movies, and I'm born and raised in San Francisco, and I started this podcast following recovery from my car accident a few years ago, and it's just been a blessing to me.
That's great.
Yeah.
How's your health? I mean, are you doing all right?
I could be doing better in the weight department, but other than that, I am healthy as a horse.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's been a slow recovery process, but it's going great. And
I went to high school with Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
And she's an amazing person. And can I tell you one Rachel story that's really funny?
Of course.
I sort of like, was going to spend a day with her out in LA. And then later I was going to an audition for Eric Bogosian was auditioning his play. God, what was the name of it? I was showing how old I am, but so I'll remember the name. So he had done this play in New York, and eventually I remember hearing some really fucked up stuff that maybe he sort of stole the idea from people or something. And anyway, but so I was going to audition for him, and I was hanging out with Rachel, and we went rollerblading, and she was like doing some protein shakes, and she was like, "Here, try this. It's got all this different stuff in it." And basically, I mean, it was organic speed essentially, and I was fucked up because I don't do any drugs, I don't drink, like I'm real, it's kind of very sort of straight edge, and it just fucked me up. And I remember going to the audition, and she drove me down to the audition and was like waiting for me out, the lobby at the Mark Taper Forum.
Mm-hmm.
And I go in and audition, and it, I had some attitude about Bogosian, and he's an amazing artist, but he made that movie Suburbia, and I was like, I went to the New York Film Festival and saw it,
Yeah.
I was such a dick. I put my hand up and I was like, why did you make a movie called Suburbia when there's already a better movie called Suburbia? And he fucking took the bait. Like, he was pissed because I think he knew. He's like, I don't know. I think he knew that the other film was better and way more organic. Like, I love Penelope Spheris' Suburbia. Like, for me, that's like a fucking super cool movie.
Yeah.
And his movie was just bullshit. I was just like, this is some old guy talking about teen. Anyway, that was bad. But so I go into audition. I've already got an attitude a little bit, and I didn't do this, but it's one of my regrets. I wanted to say, hey, let me just bring in this friend of mine, Rachel, and we'll just talk about stuff, and that'll be more interesting than this play. Because Rachel's, I'd had such an interesting history with Rachel because she had an old boyfriend named Roy who I lived in Hawaii with, and it got up to some crazy, crazy adventures, and then I had to leave. It was too much for me. Like, when the guns started coming out, I was like, I'm out. And he stayed, and it got crazier and crazier, and she was all part of that whole scene. And so anyway.
Crazy. Yeah.
That's my Rachel story.
Yeah, she was telling me about this movie she did that I love called Breaking All the Rules, and just all the crazy and dark stuff that happened while filming and stuff. And yeah, I like Rachel a lot.
I don't know that movie. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it's a teen sex comedy movie from 1985 that was shot in Canada. It's pretty good though. But was your first movie The Execution of Raymond Graham?
So The Execution of Raymond Graham was like this bizarre hybrid live television show, and it was live. Like, I think 80, maybe not 80, 70% of it was shot live on that Sunday night in a studio where we'd all run from one set to the next set, and then they had some stuff they had pre-recorded that was shot in the prison in Kingston, Ontario. And it was directed by Daniel Petrie, who was older and had done live television back in New York back in the day. Mm-hmm. So no, that wasn't my first. I mean, in some ways that was my first, big part. I played the brother of the kid who was killed by Jeff Fahey, and Jeff Fahey's going to be executed and is executed. But it was just super cool. It was an amazing production. I had scenes, like all my scenes were with Joseph Summers, Morgan Freeman, and Lois Smith. Like it was it was amazing. I gotta stop swearing. Sorry.
It's okay. You can swear all you want. You were also in one of Keanu Reeves' earliest movies, Young Again.
So Keanu lived down the street from me, and we were friends, and we would go play sports together and goof around. And that movie came to town, and they were intending only to cast locals as small parts. And then they met Keanu, and they were like, "Holy crap, this guy's amazing!" And they gave him the lead, and it was like a big deal. And so I was one of his friends. Mm-hmm. And then after that, he got, he wanted to move to LA. So I was in Toronto, and we got together, and we drove. He had this old Volvo, and we drove across the country together as he was going out to LA. And he dropped me off actually in New Mexico, or maybe Denver, and I took a bus down to New Mexico to see my dad. Mm-hmm. But I think that was his first, it was definitely the first time he was the lead, in a movie, I think he'd maybe been in some other stuff.
Yeah. Did you have any idea that he would become a huge star?
Well, no, I had no idea. I had no idea. I kept up with him, though, and he would see me in New York, and we'd hang out, and, it's hard as a young actor because you're so competitive, and, he's just the sweetest, and most talented, and it was just such an interesting person. So I wasn't surprised that, people responded to him, and, he looked, he's just everything you want, and so River's Edge was sort of the big, actually it was River's Edge, and there was another like made for TV movie that had something to do with Springsteen, or what was it?
Well, he did
some other thing.
He did one called Under the Influence.
Okay.
He was a teenager who was addicted to alcohol. Yeah. Okay.
Well, so anyway, I remember him telling me about that, but River's Edge was like the big one. I went and saw that, and I was like, he's going to be like a big movie star because, he came. I just remember right time he came in. So I was in this play, A Few Good Men. Mm-hmm. He was hanging out with this weird dude. They had rented this huge loft, and he'd already done Speed. He was a big movie star. I think, I don't know, maybe they weren't high, but they came and saw the play, and they went out to eat afterwards, and he was like, so is that like a comedy? Is that like, because Few Good Men wasn't like the best play in the world, but you'd have to be kind of high to think it was a comedy. I don't know, I just thought that was very funny.
Yeah.
He was a super smart guy. It wasn't like, so I think they were just kind of playing around, and I think if I was high, I would have thought it was I would have maybe known it wasn't a comedy, but I could have seen it as a comedy, as a parody of a sort of,
a
room drama.
Yeah, every once in a while you see one of those, you don't know if it's a comedy, a drama, or what, But the Light of Day experience, was that a good one?
It was a great experience, yeah. We shot it in Chicago and then a little bit in Cleveland, and I mostly just hung out with Michael McKean and this kid who played the drummer, who was this really neat, funny kid from Wheeling, West Virginia, who was had auditioned, and he was going to a drum school in LA. Michael J. Fox and I got along very well and stayed friends. We were both funny because he's from Vancouver and I had lived in Vancouver when I was a kid, and we'd go play hockey with the Teamsters, and Yeah, it was awesome. And the guy who shot it, John Bailey, was amazing cinematographer. So that part was really interesting. The music part, Joan Jett was great. Her people were fascinating. So yeah, that was I had a ton of fun making that.
Yeah, my parents took me to see it at the drive-in when I was like 3.5. I remember. It was like,
I have to have a good memory to remember that.
I can remember my parents taking me to see Rambo 2 and Weird Science when I was 2. I mean, it goes that far back.
Wow.
That'll tell you how much of a movie buff I am, you know? And wow.
My first movie memory was my dad taking me to see The Blob in a drive-in when I was 3.
Yeah, the original.
The original, 1968.
Wow. Do you remember how you felt when you saw it?
I remember being terrified, and I was certain that the blob ooze was coming in the car and was on, and like I had to keep all my feet up, next to my dad because it was coming in to get me.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Then your first brush with war comes in with Hamburger Hill.
Correct.
Yes. Was that a standard audition for you?
Yeah. Say that again?
Was that a standard audition for you?
Yeah, so I had an audition. The casting agent was, I think, Marianne Doherty. And she was the sweetest, coolest lady. And I went and auditioned, and I auditioned for the Dylan McDermott part.
Mm-hmm.
And I auditioned twice for it. Maybe once for her, or I think twice for the director, that big speech that he had. And I kind of sensed I wasn't going to get that part. But then Paul Martino calls me and he says, well, and this is what they said. It was confirmed later by a producer. Said, well, they made their casting. They figured out all their main characters, and they had this one other part of Murphy, and he only has one line in the film. But they all sort of wrote on a piece of paper of all the people they had seen, who they liked and who they wanted to work with or whatever, and they all chose me. And he called me and said, like, there's only one line. You want to go to the Philippines for 6 months for one line, though they say they may give you more stuff to do. And I don't know. I just was like, I don't have anything else to do. Like, there actually was something else to do. Maybe that was when Biloxi Blues happened. That was when there was like 2 offers. So I was just like, I was living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, back in this was 85. So no one was living in Williamsburg. I mean, there was some of us living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. It was rough. It was like, I remember it being in the summertime. I lived in this loft, and then people were away, and I got mugged a couple times, and it was crazy. And I was just like, yeah, I'll get out of here. So yeah. And then I got over there, and they kept putting pages underneath my. When you're on a film, they'll do rewrites, and then they'll put different colored pages under your door, and I just kept getting like more and more stuff to do. I don't know who they were taking it away from, or I don't, I had, more and more lines and more stuff. And, but it was crazy. I mean, it was super hard shoot because you had to, like, it was kind of a rip-off in some ways. Like, Screen Actors Guild didn't really have any jurisdiction, so they didn't have to do turnaround. So, like, you'd get off, you'd have to get on a bus at like 4:30 in the morning, and then they'd drop you off at like 8:30 at night. And some days you just sat around. I mean, because they had everybody on set every day.
Yeah.
So it was super grueling. And then we all got stuck there because there's that great irony of if like it's raining, it's hard to shoot rain scenes. It was just nuts. Anyway, we were all there really, I think in the end I was there for about 5 months, maybe 5.5 months.
Yeah.
But, I met some really cool people. I knew immediately that Don Cheadle would be a huge star.
Yeah.
I thought he was amazing. He was the guy that stood out to me more than anybody else. I mean, I wasn't surprised that Dylan McDermott, he was a really super nice guy. And there's other people in that cast who were interesting. Harry O'Reilly was a really interesting guy I stayed friends with.
Tommy Swerdlow.
Yeah, so Tommy was fascinating. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Kenny Lonergan film, This Is Our Youth, or play, This Is Our Youth.
Nah.
Well, you should read it because it's Tommy Swerdlow. I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing story about like a young guy who's sort of like he's still in high school, but he's hanging out with this older kid who's graduated from high school, but is hanging out, dealing drugs, sort of doing different stuff. And he has all this manic energy, and he's brilliant and crazy. And that was Tommy. I mean, Tommy was so smart, so interesting. And also drove me crazy, just drove me nuts. But, yeah, he was, I don't know. So then I don't know where Tommy Swerdlow is now. Is he writing?
I don't know. I've been looking for him myself, as a matter of fact.
He wrote Cool Runnings, or he was one of the writers on Cool Runnings.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah. But I don't know what happened to him. I mean, he was out there. He was a real sweetheart. I think his father was ill, or soon after that, his father passed on, and I don't know. He had a lot of stuff to work out. It seems like.
Yeah.
We all did. I mean, that was
Yeah. John Irvin, the director, he had done a documentary about Vietnam before. That's probably why he pulled off the movie being so realistic,
Yeah, he was a really interesting guy. His sort of, the variety of things he did were interesting. And I remember he brought over this photographer who'd been in Vietnam, and he was a war photographer. He took stills. It was Don. I forget what his last name was. I'm sure I could find it, but he was fascinating. And you just looked, like, one look at him, and you're like, oh, so this guy's seen stuff like this, really heavy stuff. And it was kind of funny. We get to Manila, and Platoon has been there recently, and a lot of people working on our film have worked on Platoon. And I think I had not seen Platoon, but I had read Platoon because I had auditioned for Platoon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, Platoon, and of course, I was a huge Apocalypse Now fan. Like, in high school, I went and saw that movie all the time, and it used to play in Toronto at this thing called the Cinesphere, which was like one of the first IMAX theaters. And I'd go there and watch it, and it just blew my mind. I mean, I knew every line, I'd seen it so many times. And, we were doing what I think is sort of accurately called like a World War II movie about Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in one scene, I was like, can we smoke a joint or something? And they're like, no, you're eating. No, you guys are drinking hot chocolate. I'm like, fair enough. Okay, we're drinking hot chocolate. So anyway, it was, John Irvin was really cool. I mean, I think we all kind of lost it a little bit at the end. His DP, Peter McDonald, was really strong and sort of ended up not directing the film, but definitely like having a big contribution to it. I met and became really good friends with the producer, on that film, Marcia Nassiter, who's a really interesting lady.
Mm-hmm.
She was at United Artists for a certain point, and she was one of the producers on The Big Chill and Ironweed and different stuff. And really neat lady. She's still around. She had a TV show for a while called, like, it was kind of like a review show. Her and a friend of hers, and they sort of, they trafficked in the fact, like, hey, we're these old people, but they just had such an amazing
rapport,
much experience, and had been around for so long. Yeah, they had a cool rapport for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Old Geezers, I think it was called. The Old Geezers.
Old Geezers. Now, with Biloxi Blues. I love that movie. It's my favorite Neil Simon movie and story overall. And I think you should have gotten an Academy Award for playing Hennessy.
Well, that's super kind of you.
Yes.
That was like the most fun I've ever had on a movie. Corey lived right down the right across the sort of compound from me.
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't in the hotel. We went and got apartments. He was super. I don't know if he got into Guru Mai with you. You know, part of, like his acting training at that point involved his sort of dedication to Guru Mai, and it was that was hard on some of the cast. Like that was it definitely, you know, ostracized him. But I thought it was super cool. I was like, this guy is so disciplined. But he had one very interesting thing that maybe didn't have much to do with his guru, which he had this badass car. He had a '67 Malibu with like, and he had bought it in Santa Fe, I'm pretty sure, and it was cherry, fully raced out. It had a 327 with like a Hearst shift. I mean, and we would go bomb around, like, and he'd go bomb around. Like that was his sort of, you know, his little escape valve, which was, mine was I'd go play basketball with local dudes I'd met, and then we had all these awesome extras who were down from the University of Arkansas, and I found a couple gyms that we could go play at night, and it was super fun. And then we had the run of this place, Fort Chaffee in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is this huge Army base. It was like 27,000 acres or something, and no one was there. I mean, it was basically abandoned. They had, I think the last big thing that had been there, they'd used it for the resettlement of some of the Vietnamese refugees. So you could go out there and just have a ball, like just, you know, super fun. And it was a great experience. And Mike Nichols was so confident.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he just like, you knew that it was going to be everything. There was never going to be a problem. Like he would get what he needed to get, you know?
Right. Was everyone just laughing all day because the dialogue is so hilarious?
I mean, you know, we were all young and sort of figuring out how to, I think, prepare and protect ourselves, like protect our energy, because, you know, if you're actually on film sets, you actually, you know, there tends to be this sort of like, you know, especially if you're working with some of the older sort of real pros, like they really guard themselves to a certain degree, like, you know, sort of reserve their energy. And so I was sort of in that camp. Like I would read a lot. I remember I was reading like a lot of Bukowski and I don't know, just Hemingway. I don't know. I was just in this sort of reading zone. I remember I read Absalom when I was down there.
Mm-hmm.
Getting some Faulkner in there. But so it wasn't, yeah, but there was lots of, but, you know, lunches were super fun. And especially like on the weekends, the amazing thing that Mike Nichols did is he would fly down. So there was a part of the barracks they used for seeing dailies, right?
Right.
And he didn't invite, we weren't allowed to go to the dailies. Matthew went a couple times and told us about it, but he would fly movies down and we would have movie night.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd choose like weird, like I remember like one night was Gilda, and I'd never seen Gilda.
Yeah.
And I was like, Rita Hayworth, holy shoot, you know, or he brought down Jules and Jim, I think was the first one. And this is crazy. The night he brought down Jules and Jim, Julia Roberts, who was like 18 at the time, was visiting Marcus Flanagan because he was dating her sister.
Oh.
and she was on her way, or she was soon to go work on her first film. She had been cast in this film, and she wanted to get some experience on a set, so she was going to come hang out on our set a little bit because she was cast in this Justine Bateman girl band movie. I don't know the title.
Satisfaction.
Satisfaction. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So she comes down, and we hit it off, and we're like, I mean, dude, it was like so set up for me because I knew Truffaut pretty well. I loved Jules and Jim, and we're sitting like next to each other, like watching Jules and Jim, like eating popcorn, drinking beer, like talking about the movie as we're watching the movie. And it was, and then the next day we went like canoeing on the Mulberry River. Like it was just crazy fun. It was crazy, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Did you, when you read the part, did you get a sense of Hennessy's backstory?
Well, it's interesting. When I first got to New York and I flirted around with this one like smaller agent, they sent me on one audition, and the audition was for the Broadway play of Biloxi Blues, and I read the part of Hennessy, and I didn't get the part. But so I'd always had that character in my mind, like it had always sort of been in my mind. And then when I read the script, I mean, there really isn't any indication of a backstory whatsoever. It doesn't say where he's from. It doesn't say, like, some of the other guys are very specifically from places,
Right.
Hennessy, it doesn't say anything about him. It just says that his name is James J. Hennessy. And me and another actor who I love, Alan Pottinger, who was in the film,
Yep.
we decided it was James Joyce Hennessy. But no, there wasn't. I mean, I'm not a big, like, I need to know the backstory actor guy. Like, I don't spend a lot of time on that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that just doesn't have anything to do with acting to me, really. Like, that sort of writing or that I mean, in some cases you need to know. Like, I was in a Civil War movie and I was like, I need to know what the hell happened. Like, what battles has he been in? What is, because I was playing a veteran who'd been in the war for 3 years. I was like, okay, so what happened here? Why is he into France? It was a weird character. But with that character, I just focused on, the way I'd been trained, which was just like, it's all in the scene. Like, focus on the scenes. What can you express? What can you, get across in the scenes? That's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, because I always got a sense that, he was a guy who was basically disowned by his family, and, he volunteered to go into the Army because he had nothing else to live for. And then, of course, his hormones got the better of him.
Well, that's a very interesting interpretation of it. And I do think that from the scenes, I knew I was an outsider.
Yeah.
Like, I knew I wasn't, and it's really funny. I was in a makeup trailer. I'd gotten down there early and I was going to get my hair cut. And I had this kind of epiphany where it just hit me, and it just, like, in my mind, some part of me said, it's you. This character is you. You don't have to do anything. And of course I had to do my work. I had to do my preparation work, and I had to do my, emotional work for scenes that needed it and stuff like that. But it was this huge relief of, like, I'm this guy. Like, this is, and I think myself, in general, my orientation towards the world is not like, like an alpha male out there kicking ass. It's always been like, I moved around a ton when I was a kid. I was always the new kid. I was always sort of separate from in different ways.
Yeah.
Because you are as a new person. So I think all of that was easy and accessible and made, and it's interesting that you read into that, because that sort of, I definitely ID that I'm different from these guys, and that was part of what I was trying to express in some way, but at the same time, I also wanted me as him to be, really strong when I'm standing up for what I believe in, like very, very convicted about the way I see the world and what's important to me,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and you succeeded with that, I think. And
Thanks.
Oh, absolutely. How was working with Victor Garber and Liberace behind the music?
Well, me and Victor became really close friends. I mean, he was spectacular. He was such a nice guy, and that was super weird experience. The director was really interesting, this British guy, and he kind of, he had these big ideas, like, I want you to, you're going to be standing on the bed and you'll be screaming. And I'd be like, dude, that's like insane. Like, that's going to be so over the top. And so we had some sort of squabbles, but Victor was super supportive, and Victor's just a dream of a person, and I stayed close with him, and I haven't spoke to him in a long time, but yeah, he shared a lot about, like, he really wanted to do films and TV, and he just, he had that experience of being, he was so afraid that he was going to be sort of typed in a certain way, and that he was stuck sort of, in musical theater and stuff, and it's been super neat to see that he's, gone on and had such a robust career in front of the camera,
Oh, yeah.
And he's from like a small town in Ontario, too, so we kind of bonded over the Canadian thing. We shot that up in Montreal, which was super fun.
Yeah, that same year, there was another Liberace TV movie with Andy Robinson playing him. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But the executive producer of this one, you were in, Linda Yellen, she's been on the show. She's a great lady.
Oh, cool. I don't remember her. I mostly remember I was infatuated with the French-Canadian girls on this one. Yeah, the set was really fun. It was like I like shooting stuff in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any good stories about Necessary Roughness?
So Necessary Roughness was pretty interesting. Eric North, who was a really nice guy, was my stunt double. But then when I shaved my head, he got really pissed off because he didn't want to shave his head. So, but I did martial arts, so I do sort of the majority of the stunts in that myself, which was fun.
Yeah.
I really liked doing that. That was a lot of fun to make a football movie. I guess the studio was weird, or I don't know, they were pissed off that I shaved my head too, because both me and Marcus Giamatti, he's a guy I'm interested. I need to look at IMDb. I don't know what's really, obviously he hasn't had the career his brothers had, but he was a really sweetheart guy, really interesting guy.
Uh-huh.
All those guys were great. I mean, Scott Bakula was super cool. Bateman's fascinating to me because, like, at that time, I think his trajectory was like, I don't think he really found himself as an actor yet, and I don't know what happened to him that changed him and made him such a badass actor, but something, I don't know, something along the way, like at that point he was, I think he'd, grown up in front of the camera, but I was like, yeah, this guy, anyway, I just was sort of like, I didn't at all see the trajectory that he would have as an actor. And I'm sure I'm not alone with that, but then I was so happy when I'd see him and I'd be like, holy shoot, this guy's become an amazing actor. Like, and he's had this incredible career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about The Turning?
Have you ever seen The Turning?
I saw it one time years ago.
I can't even find it. That's a movie that's pretty painful in some ways because, like, I think it had a lot of potential. I'm going to be pretty frank. I think the director didn't have a clue what he was doing, and we all knew that immediately, and it was really sad. I needed so much help on that film. Like, what that part demanded was, like, I was available to give that part what it needed, but I needed a director to help me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, even the thing of, like, insisting that I had a dialect coach or something like that. Like, I just had too much on my mind, like, trying to make that work. And yeah, so that director didn't have anywhere near the capacity to deal with that story, with the sort of powerful imagery ideas in that story. And I thought that movie was going to make me a big movie star. I mean, I thought that was it. I was like, fine, I'm going to get my big shot. And it ended up being, my agents were embarrassed about it. They hated it. Nobody like, it never got any sort of distribution. Its claim to fame eventually became that me and Gillian Anderson had a sex scene, and a news show put that on the news,
Yeah.
But the potential was there. I mean, Karen Allen was amazing. Ray Berry is a fascinating actor and a great actor. And, I mean, I'd see him do stuff in New York, on stage at La Mama. Like, they had, it was from a play. The script maybe wasn't perfect, but I don't know. That was super disappointing.
Yeah, I can imagine. I love Karen Allen, though. That's why I had to ask. I had a chance to meet her at a convention before COVID happened. I wish I could have done it, though, but the rain kept me inside. So.
No, she's incredible. She's an incredible woman. And I remember, I had to do this scene with her. I had a knife to her throat, and she was not fucking around. She was like, listen, if you don't hold me, I'm going to get away. Like, and she told me the story. She had like an experience like that. Forget it was she was traveling, she was vacationing somewhere, and she got attacked by somebody, and they had a knife, and she got away.
Yeah.
And it was great, because it was like, it made this scene like, I'm going to have to use every ounce of strength I have, and I've got to be cool with this knife, which is dull down, and it's got a blood thing on the end of it. Like, it's really complicated, but, but she was like, we're not playing here. Like, let's make this, let's do this if we're going to do it. So that was great. It was great.
Mm-hmm. So why
that was a highlight? Jillian was a highlight too. I mean, I knew immediately as soon as I auditioned with her. She had come out of Northwestern. I was like, she is it. Like, she is incredibly talented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's very talented. She was great on the X-Files. It's no surprise that she became successful from that and stuff. But unfortunately, she's been kind of typecast from it. But that's the way the business goes.
Well, I just watched a performance that she did at the old Vic of doing, or the young Vic or whatever it was. But when she played Blanche Dubois in a production of Streetcar Named Desire, and she was incredible.
Mm-hmm, that's good. So why did you get into teaching?
I had a pretty rough go as an actor. I guess when I was from like 92 onward, where I honestly didn't really have it any. Like, I wasn't interested. I just wanted something out. I just wanted sort of more. I started making movies. I made this short that did really well. It was at Sundance, and I wanted to write more, and I wanted to make more films, and that was hard. Mm-hmm. And, I eventually, I had done a lot of, a good amount of volunteer work with an organization called the 52nd Street Project, which is one of the great sort of, inner city theater programs that goes out and gets kids to write plays and act in plays and do it. And I just love that. And so then I had friends who were actors and theater artists, and they were doing this thing called the New York City Teaching Fellows, where they were going into schools and teaching. And I was like, I just want to change. And so I did that, and I did that for 3 years. I taught up in the South Bronx, and it was really interesting. That school wasn't necessarily a great fit for me, but I was thinking about, maybe getting into, different school or administration or doing something. But then I applied to the Michener Center because I was still writing screenplays. And so then I did 3 years down at the University of Texas, and I got to direct a film at the end of that, which was a great experience. The film wasn't that well received. I didn't write it, and there was a lot of constraints on me, but I had an amazing experience. Casting was a big part of it. Mm-hmm. Gabriel Luna, who's gone on to have a great career, hopefully he'll keep building on, the Terminator stuff. But so then at the end of that, I didn't really know what to do, and I got an offer I was teaching part-time film at a really cool private school in Austin. Mm-hmm. Where I still teach, and then the next year a theater person left, and they asked if I would do that, and I was editing the film, and I was like, no, I can't, I got to finish this film. And they just kept sort of, we sort of negotiated and made it work, and then, I don't know, it's just been really, I'd never really had a job. I mean, the teaching job job up in the Bronx, the first sort of, I had worked in restaurants a little bit, done construction, and, you know, worked on a farm and done all this different stuff, but there was something to just having a schedule and also, you know, giving, I don't know, just being with kids and sort of putting my focus outward on other people that I just found to be very rewarding, and it's remained rewarding. And teaching's so hard. Like, you get to keep learning stuff, and I direct plays at the school where I work, which is amazing. You know, it's such a learning experience. You learn, you know, more, and you get to, I remember as an actor, I'd always think, like, I've got so much to give and nobody wants it, you know? Mm-hmm. That's painful. Like, it's painful, you know, and so now, like, as a teacher, I have a lot to give, and I can, then the balance is you end up giving to, you know, you got to sort of find the balance where you sort of turn off the spigot, because there's so much, you know, you could plan a lesson, you know, for 1,000 hours really, or something like that. So I don't know. So that's a long, you know, I dropped out of high school, and now to be a high school teacher is hilarious to me, and it seems to be something that fits me. And I continue to make stuff on my own as well, but it's been a very good, it's just been really healing and rewarding, and also I just, you know, the comfort of having a job is like, you know, I had a very unstable childhood, so to have an unstable professional life, you know, I could roll with that when I was younger, but at some point that was too much, you know, I just didn't work.
You get a satisfaction teaching that you didn't get in acting, would you say?
I don't know. I mean, it's different, but I did a play this year at the St. Edward's, which is a really great small college here in town, and they have a really good theater program, and I was in a production of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, and I got to play, like, probably the best part I've ever had, the father, Ed, and I got tremendous satisfaction out of that. Like, you know, and all my students came and saw it, which was super fun. And, you know, and I was able to give to that. Like, I gave everything I had to that performance, and that was what was rewarding, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that I knew I never stopped working. Backstage, I just sat and meditated, and, you know, I was just on. I was just like, I'm going to give everything I have to this. And that's where the satisfaction comes, is, you know, fully giving to something. Same with Biloxi Blues. Like, I gave all of myself to that production, you know?
Yeah.
And I got a lot out of it, you know?
Yeah.
So, but that's not, you know, that's hard to find that, you know? And it's, you know, some people, you know, get, a lot of that is, I don't know, it's sort of like, I don't know if it's fate or luck. I mean, luck has so much to, you know, just timing and whether or not you get to, you know, and I was lucky as an actor that I had the big experiences, you know, like when I was on Broadway and opposite Derek Jacobi, like that was huge. I was 20 years old. I'd never taken a voice lesson in my life. I'm on Broadway, you know, playing these scenes with Derek Jacobi, and, you know, it was kind of ironic, but I sort of didn't get it. Like, I didn't get the, it was just a hard, I didn't have the sort of internal resources necessary to sort of, you know, experience that and enjoy it as much as I've had, like, as I've gotten older doing work, you know, because I think I was mostly just scared most of the time.
Yeah. Fear.
Listen, I'm going to have to, I have a 2:00 that I got to jump on for work.
Yes.
And I'm happy to finish this up at another time, or if you want to, however you want to proceed.
Oh, no, this has gone.
I'm going to need
This has gone really great. I was just curious, do you have anything lined up that COVID has prevented?
No. I mean, other than my work with the students up at the school, it's been a good time for me to write. I'm actually writing. I've been working on a bit of like a memoir piece, and I've also been working on something that's a novel, but I turned it into like a mini series a little bit during COVID. So I mean, that part of COVID's been productive, but I wasn't lined up to do anything on the acting front. I'd fortunately just done that play. That play had come down in February, so.
Well, you have a great story there, and I would definitely buy that book. And I want to thank you so much, Mike, for coming on the show today.
Hey, it's great talking to you. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to I'll check out some of your other shows as well.
Thanks. My pleasure, and you stay safe out there.
All right, you too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. Mike Dolan. Ain't he a cool dude? Very nice guy. Intense guy. Great stories. I like them a lot. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.